All right, welcome back. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Today, we're continuing our BCBA exam practice question series, where we're going to the next set of BCBA exam practice questions and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out bcbastudy.com. We offer 3 practice exams, a task list study guide, and of course, our combo pack. We just started our 4th BCBA exam, only on YouTube at the moment, so be sure to check that out. As always, let's keep those questions, comments coming. Work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. Question 1. You explained to a group of teachers that they should ignore Susie's whistling behavior during class. Previously, Susie was receiving reprimands and detention. 2 out of the 3 teachers ignore the whistling completely, while 1 teacher occasionally asks Susie to stop politely. What is likely to occur as a result? All right. What is the question asking about? Well, it's asking about the fact that 2 out of the 3 teachers are engaging in correct intervention, while 1 isn't. And what intervention is that? Well, we know we have a group of teachers, and they are to ignore Susie's whistling behavior because before she was doing what? Well, she was getting these reprimands and detention. Attention, lots of maybe negative reinforcement with attention, just a lot of attention for this whistling. You say, well, let's ignore it. In other words, we're putting it on extinction. Now, what's going to happen if we implement an extinction procedure and it isn't implemented with a high rate of fidelity? In other words, only 2 of the 3 teachers are actually doing it while 1 isn't. And when you only have 3 teachers, if 1 isn't doing it, that's a significant chunk of time where extinction isn't occurring. And as we know, extinction needs to occur as close to 100% of the time as possible. So, what is likely to occur as a result of extinction not being implemented continuously? A, extinction. Well, for all the reasons we just listed, chances of extinction occurring are very low. B, resistance to extinction. Resistance to extinction is much more likely. Resistance to extinction is just how long it takes for that behavior to start being put on extinction and to start being affected by extinction. And if we have 1 out of 3 teachers not implementing extinction correctly, resistance is expected to be much higher. What about spontaneous recovery? Well, spontaneous recovery happens after extinction occurs. So extinction hasn't yet occurred. Spontaneous recovery can't occur. And then extinction-induced aggression. Aggression brought on by a strenuous extinction procedure. We're not implementing extinction correctly, so the idea that aggression would occur based on extinction requires extinction to occur. We don't think extinction is going to likely take place given the current setup, so D's out. What is most likely to occur is that Susie is going to resist extinction as 1 teacher continues to ignore the actual intervention. A group home contacts you and asks for a consultation on the program they run at the home. You're a behavior analyst with experience in group home settings. You tell them you would like to come and take a look around the home during a normal day. You're conducting a what? Pretty simple, straightforward question. First off, you are a behavior analyst with experience, so being in a group home, no big deal, right? Going there, you're going to give a consultation. But you're going to go and take a look around the home. Now, why would you do that? Well, it's important to get an understanding of the environment that your clients exist in, right? If you do home services, you should look around the home. School, same thing. Clinic, you control that environment. What you're essentially doing is looking at the home environment during a normal day to see what takes place. And when you are assessing the environment and not necessarily the learner, what do we call that? A, ecological assessment. Yes, an ecological assessment. You're more concerned with the environment of the learner than the learner themselves. Just as important because environment affects behavior, behavior affects environment. Behavior is just reacting to the different things in their environment. Environment is everything, right? So you going look around the home, you're just doing a quick ecological assessment to get an idea of what's going on in that home. You're not doing a functional analysis. We're not yet looking at a specific behavior and determining functions. We're not doing a full FBA, right? This is almost pre-FBA. With an FBA, we're going to start doing interviews. We're going to do record collection. We're going to do direct observations. This is almost pre-FBA, right? We're just looking at the environment right now. We're not even focused on a client themselves. And then D, indirect assessment. Again, yes, technically it's an indirect assessment because we're not actually looking at the client, but we have a stronger answer, right? We have the actual assessment we're conducting. It's an ecological assessment. Very careful, right? That's why we don't just pick an answer choice and move on. We need to read all our answer choices, eliminate the wrong ones systematically, and then find the best, strongest, correct answer. So in this case, you're conducting an ecological assessment. Client's target behavior is responding to a question, and the schedule is an FR1 schedule. The RBT asks the client, what is 2 plus 2? And the client says 5. The RBT says, no, that isn't it. Try again, and does not deliver reinforcement. What would you tell the RBT if they were your supervisee? So if the RBT was your supervisee, how would you explain their feedback? How would you explain their performance here? What did they do wrong? Well, first, what's the target behavior? Target behavior is responding to a question. Did the client respond to the question? Client did. The client got it wrong, but that isn't the target behavior. Second, what's the reinforcement schedule? FR1. Every target response should produce reinforcement. RBT did not deliver reinforcement. Third, when giving the feedback, the only thing the RBT said was, no, that isn't it. Try again. They didn't specify what isn't it. They didn't specify the behavior. All they said, no, that isn't it. We know at least 3 things are going on here in our problem. So what would you tell them, your supervisee? A, you need to specify behaviors in your corrective feedback. Absolutely, right? That's the proper way to give corrective feedback. We specify what we're looking at. In this case, the client actually did engage in a target behavior, but assuming answering correctly was what we wanted, the RBT should say, no, 2 plus 2 is 4, or no, 5 isn't correct, 2 plus 2 is actually 4, something along those lines. We're specifying what we want. Regardless, the RBT is not actually looking at the correct target behavior. So if we look at B, make sure we are paying attention to what the target behavior is. That is what we're looking for, right? B, make sure we are paying attention to what the target behavior is, because this RBT clearly is not. So now A and B are both looking good. C, make sure we are following the reinforcement schedule, which the RBT is not doing, right? The RBT is implementing this should be implementing this FR1 schedule, meaning client responded to the question, should get reinforcement. However, see how everything trickles down. Since the RBT isn't focused on the right target behavior, they don't deliver reinforcement. So now they're also violating the reinforcement schedule. What would you tell them? You would say specify behaviors, pay attention to what the target behavior is, make sure we follow the reinforcement schedule. You would do D, all the above. Blaine is an adult male who received ABA services through a government program. Blaine needs assistance at his job because he sometimes forgets to do inventory. The BCBA in charge designs an intervention for Blaine to learn to play an instrument in his spare time. This intervention might violate what dimension of ABA? Pretty easy dimension question. Dimension questions can be challenging. I totally get it. I think this one is fairly straightforward, because what's the problem here? Well, we have an adult male who receives ABA. He needs assistance at his job because he forgets to do inventory, part of his job. However, his BCBA says, I'm going to get you to play an instrument in your spare time. What's the issue there? Okay. Remember, all we use is the information we have. Okay. So we don't know what else is going on. All we know is Blaine needs help at his job. BCBA says, I want you to play an instrument. Why is that an issue? What are we violating here? A, analytic. Analytic is saying, are we looking for some sort of functional control, functional relationship? Well, not necessarily, right? We're not looking at necessarily the IV and the DV or our intervention and behavior. We're looking at the issue of Blaine needs assistance. BCBA says learn to play an instrument. What's the issue there? B, behavioral. Well, still behavioral, right? Playing an instrument. Nothing wrong with the behavioral aspect of that. The problem is C, applied. It's not applied. And applied is we're looking for meaningful, socially valid behaviors. Okay, we have to adjust those first. The BCBA needs to be targeting this job issue for learning to play an instrument. Learning to play an instrument is great, great leisure activity. Blaine doing well at his job, much more meaningful, much more socially valid. And then D, conceptually systematic. The intervention to teach Blaine an instrument might be conceptually systematic with ABA principles, doesn't change the fact it's violating the problem of not being meaningful, not being socially valid, given our current situation. So the intervention might violate issue or the dimension of applied. Okay? The BCBA needs to focus on Blaine's job first, and then we can talk about the instrument. Again, only use the information they give you in the question. You have to train yourself to do that. It's too easy to assume, draw from past experiences. Can't do that. Use the information given, nothing more, nothing less. John's roommates attempt to modify his behavior without him knowing. Each time John says the word tomato, John's roommates hand him an M&M. John does not know why, but he is now saying tomato many times a day. This effect refers to what? So old John is now saying tomato all the time. Not sure why, but it's because his roommate have modified his behavior through positive reinforcement. So the fact that John doesn't know why he's saying it more, does it affect reinforcement? Not. The learner does not even need to be aware they're being reinforced, punished. Okay. As long as it's impacting behavior, it doesn't matter about their awareness. And what do we call that? A, automatic reinforcement. Automatic reinforcement just means alone, right? Or single, only one person involved. This is clearly a socially mediated reinforcement. B, automaticity of reinforcement. That's what we're looking for. The automaticity of reinforcement is the idea that it doesn't matter if the person or the learner, or the student or the client knows they're being reinforced. Reinforcement is still effective, despite a lack of awareness. John has no idea what's going on. Doesn't matter. Automaticity of reinforcement says reinforcement can still be effective. Rule governed behavior. They didn't give John a rule. There's no rule in place. And then respondent behavior. Respondent behavior is not dictated by consequence. It's a simple SR relationship. John's tomato saying behavior is dictated by the consequence of getting M&M. So it's operant. So this effect, John not understanding he's being reinforced, and yet his behavior changing, is the automaticity of reinforcement. A team of BCBAs designed a group contingency for their clients on Saturday during a social skills session. The BCBAs decided on a VR4 schedule for the group and will use an interdependent contingency. The group will earn 5 tokens that they will place on a wall-mounted token board. BCBAs agree and end their meeting. Did the BCBAs forget anything? Seems pretty well thought out, right? We've got a group contingency, this VR4 schedule, interdependent. We've got these 5 tokens and a token board. Well, what are they going to exchange the tokens for? That's the first thing that pops into my mind. I need some backup reinforcers here, right? Tokens are generalized condition reinforcers. They're great, but they only have effectiveness if you can exchange them. What did they forget? A, you cannot use a VR schedule for a token economy. Sure you can. Great schedule to use for a token economy. Nothing wrong there. B, you cannot use a group contingency with the token economy. You absolutely can. We're about to release our group contingency video. Let's Learn ABA series, so be sure to check that out. But a token economy is totally fine in a group contingency. C, they did not identify backup reinforcers. There we go. We need our backup reinforcers, right? What are we going to exchange these tokens for? They don't have any value if I can't exchange them for a break, computer time, whatever it might be. I need backup reinforcers. D, no, they did not forget anything. Overall, good planning. Don't forget your backup reinforcers. Arguably the most important piece because we need to give our tokens value. A coach is evaluating his players for the upcoming season. He watches Akon run and labels him fast. He then watches Jeezy run and labels him slow. What is the coach using to describe behavior? 3 main ways we can talk about behavior. Function, why it happens. Topography, features, what it looks like. And magnitude, the intensity. Slow, fast. Low, high, soft, quiet, right? Or soft, loud. So, what is coach describing behavior with? Is he using function? Is he describing the function of the behavior? Well, no, we're not sure why the running is occurring. We know he's evaluating his players, but why are they running? What is the function here? We're not sure. He's not giving us function. What about topography? Is he describing how Akon runs, his form? How Jeezy runs and how he pumps his arms and how he looks running? No, we don't have the topography and we don't have the features of the running. What we have is the magnitude, right? We have the intensity. Akon's fast, he's slow. It's like if you said, well, John plays his instrument loud and Jane plays her instrument soft. You speak loudly, you speak softly. That's the magnitude, that's intensity. Okay. So the coach evaluating his players is just evaluating the intensity of their running, or in other words, the magnitude. And then finally, pretty easy question, just a refresher. Who identified the relationship between the stimulus and the response? In turn, focused on SR behaviorism. Guy did the baby Albert experiment where he put the bunny mask on, made loud noises, and terrified the infant to test his theory, right? And who did the SR behaviorism? Definitely not Skinner, right? Skinner is radical. Pavlov was the dog in the bell. Watson was the one who focused on SR behaviorism. Okay. Cooper wrote the white book. Who focused on SR behaviorism? Watson. All right. Thank you for watching. Please check out bcbastudy.com for all our study materials. As a reminder, we started BCBA exam 4, so be sure to check that out on our channel. You can find the other 3 exams at bcbastudy.com. Questions, comments, let us know. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.